In today's video, we're going to show you exactly how to complete a contract of sale, step by step. Josh and Jayden.vecchio here, mortgage brokers with Galloway, the home for home buyers across Australia. Today, we're going to walk you through the 8 things you need to do to complete a contract of sale, including the exact clauses you can use to negotiate in your contract of sale and the 7-5-30 strategy to help you negotiate like a pro. Now, this process is based on a standardized Queensland contract. So if you're from another state, unfortunately, this isn't applicable for you. So let's jump in.
So this is what a standard contract of sale looks like. It's got the seller's agent's details. It's dated once it's all signed. It has the seller, who's the person selling the property, obviously, their solicitors. And the second page is where all your information goes on there. Under the buyer, it has your name. Just make sure that they include your full name, including all your middle names. It has a section for the buyer's agent, if you have one, of course, and your solicitor's details in here. It also lists your property and the title details that the solicitor will be across.
Before we jump in, we just want to remind you that everything we cover here is general advice only. So if you're looking to get into a contract of sale, it's always best to get your own independent legal advice. 1. Standardized contract.
So the first step before completing the contract sale is you want to make sure that it's a standard contract. To do this, it's pretty simple. You just need to look for that REIQ logo in the top corner of the contract, or also see the copyright, the Real Estate Institute of Queensland, on the bottom. The reason we want to do this is that if the contract is non-standard, you need to get a solicitor or conveyancer to look over it. The reason you want to do this is you'll have to get a solicitor or conveyancer to check over it if it's a non-standard contract, to make sure there's no clauses that are unfavorable or untoward to you. Essentially, in using a standardized contract, all the clauses are evenly weighted so both the buyer's and seller's interests are being looked after.
Warning, it's really common for properties which are being sold off the plan, brand new, or without the intervention of a real estate agent to have a non-standard contract. If this is the case, you 100% definitely want to get legal advice to safeguard your interests as a buyer. So in terms of the process, the real estate in general is going to fill out the contract of sale for you. They're going to put the seller's details, the seller's solicitor's details, your details of the buyer, and it's at this point that you can either go ahead and sign the contract and get the process rolling, or go chat to a solicitor, get them to review your contract. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly when and if you need a solicitor to get involved. So keep watching. 2. Deposits.
Now, under your purchase price, there's the deposit amount. Now you need to know that the deposit is completely negotiable. Now, a lot of agents are going to have you believe that it's not negotiable, but that's simply untrue. The maximum an agent can ask for is either 10 or 20% if the purchase price is off the plan. If you're buying an existing property, it can be kind of whatever you want realistically. But generally speaking, we suggest about $1,000 initial deposit and then a balance deposit of up to around 5% depending on what you can afford. The deposit is placed prior to settling to safeguard the seller's interests. So as a buyer, if you're in breach of contract terms, the amount placed in deposit can be kept by the sellers. The reasons for these breaches can include not settling or fulfilling settlement conditions.
Remember that the bank sees your deposit that you put down on the contract as a part of your overall deposit. So in other words, if your total home deposit is $50,000 and you put down $10,000 on the contract of sale, that means at settlement, you'll only have to pay the remaining $40,000 of your deposit. And most agents, when filling out the paperwork, will put the maximum they can get from you of a deposit possible. The reason is they're trying to guard the seller's interests against you from just walking away from the contract and leaving your deposit there. And for existing properties, this can be up to 10% of the contract price, and for properties off the plan, up to 20%. So it can be a massive amount that you'd potentially lose if something goes wrong, unless you've got a finance clause, which we're going to go through in a sec. And here's a deposit hack. If you're in a multiple offer situation, remember that the small things are the big things. The seller might have 2 contracts for the same property at the same purchase price, and if your offer has a little higher deposit, it'll show that you're in a stronger position than the other party. So put another way, if there's 2 contracts for $300,000 and they've both got the same deposit amounts in the contract, there's not much to tell them apart. But if they're both for $300,000 and this one has $10,000 more deposit on the contract, it's going to make your offer look a little bit better in the eyes of the seller and make them more likely to accept your offer without having to pay any extra money. 3. Finance clause. The finance clause is incredibly powerful for buyers in Queensland. Why? Well, in other states, having signed a contract, you'll lose your deposit for pulling out. I'm talking about literally thousands of dollars of your hard-earned deposit. In Queensland, you can withdraw your offer under the finance clause and be entitled to a full refund. Here in Queensland, we have one of the best contract systems. And unlike many other states, if you don't have a pre-approval, it'll leave yourself open for losing your dream home, with a term known as gazumping.
Gazumping can happen when you might have had your offer accepted verbally by the sellers, but then someone comes in from behind you and offers a little bit more and knocks you off. They basically steal your lunch. It's something that's really common in New South Wales and other states. But fortunately, in Queensland, you can get your finance clause to avoid being gazumped and missing out on that home of your dreams.
That's right. The standard terms here in Queensland for finance are either 14 or 21 days from contract date. So if your offer is accepted, it means you've got time to get your finance approved. At the same time, the seller isn't able to accept an offer even if it's higher than the one you've put in.
When it comes to the finance clauses in Queensland, we've got the best ones. Because in fact, clause 3.1 actually says the finance terms have to be satisfactory to you as the buyer. So it could be the case that maybe you get the finance approved, but it's not the right rate, or you kind of change your mind and they're not satisfactory, so you can kind of walk away from the contract under your finance clause. So the next step is to look at the finance clause. In the finance amount, you'll want to put sufficient to complete. Really, the agent doesn't need to know how much you're applying for. And that's why you put sufficient to complete rather than the exact loan amount you're applying for. It's a bit of a negotiation trick. Likewise for the financier, in other words, the bank you're applying for, you can just put at buyer's choice. They don't need to know that you're applying through the Commonwealth Bank or ANZ or whatever bank you might have for the same reason mentioned. Now, the next part is where the magic happens. In Brisbane at the moment, 14 days or 21 days is more than enough time to get your finance approved. So that's why you can put 14 days from the contract date and that'll cover you for your finance clause. When it comes to working out the days for your finance clause, it's best to have a quick chat to your broker or your banker to work out what's going to work in your situation. If you've got trusts and self-employed stuff and your situation is pretty complex, you might want to get 21 days for finance. But if it's pretty simple, your broker is confident they can get stuff knocked away, you might be able to even reduce your finance terms to 14 or 7 days. So Josh, when do the 14 days for finance actually start?
These days are based on the contract's date. So if you sign on the 1st of March, it'll mean that you have 14 days after this day. Likewise for the settlement. So Jayden, how do you make your offer better?
Listen, I've got a bit of a strategy here for you guys, but don't tell anyone. We call it the 7-5-30 strategy. So like I said in the example before, if there's multiple offers on a property, there's two contracts that are $300,000 each, the deposits are the same, the finance clause is the same, there's not much to differentiate each other. But if you're working with a broker that can get stuff moving quicker, you can change your finance days from 14 days to 7 days, and your building and pest from 7 days to 5 days. It's gonna put you head and shoulders above the other offer. They're gonna think you're way more confident, and with your 7-day finance clause, you're gonna be more likely to get that property for $300,000 and not pay $1 more.
4. Building and pest.
Standard terms here for the building and pest clause are generally 7 or 14 days. In Queensland, if you're buying a house, it's really important to check for problems like termites. This is much more common than you think because of the high humidity weather, plus other things like structural issues and buying a house that's more than 10 years old. If you're buying a newly built property, you can actually switch out this clause for a pre-settlement inspection, also known as a defect inspection report, which reviews the finishes of your newly built property and makes sure they're up to standard.
For the building and pest inspection, what you don't want to do is rely on the report. And instead, you want to be there when the inspection is completed. Once it is, you'll want to ask the inspector to walk you through the report. What they'll then do is show you the items listed.
These reports can look really complicated, which Josh is going to show you an example in a minute of just how confusing they are. So when they do this, you want to ask the inspector 3 really simple questions. The first is this a major issue? Is it something that it's going to cause the house to fall down in the next 5 years? Or is it something that a bit of duct tape and some paint can fix up? The second question you want to ask is, what will happen if I don't fix it? If I just ignore it, kind of like how you used to treat your old car, is it going to fall apart or is it going to break down in the future? It's a really simple question, but very effective. And the third, and if not, I reckon probably the most important question is, how much do you think it's going to cost to fix this? If you're anything like us, we're not super handy on the tools. It's hard to know how much it's going to cost to fix a kitchen, replace a tap, that sort of stuff. But the building and pest inspector might say, hey Josh, it's $500, don't worry about it. You can use that to negotiate. By asking these questions, you'll understand if the issues are major or minor.
The problem with the building and pest inspection report is that they're written in such a way to negate all liability for the inspector. It was only late last year this happened to one of my customers. Having read the report, she wanted to crash the contract, as the inspector noted that there were major issues with the property. Having had a discussion with me and finding out that she hadn't been able to make the inspection, I suggested she call the inspector and ask these 3 questions. After doing so, she found out that in actual fact, what was noted on the report were minor and wouldn't need much to fix at all.
Better yet, she was actually able to use the report to negotiate the contract price down by about $2,000, which is just savings because then you can use that money to fix the stuff yourself down the line.
And by remembering this, it'll make all the difference when you do inspect your property. 5 special conditions.
So the special conditions are a really important one in a Queensland contract, where nearly everything is standardized and boilerplate templated except for the special conditions. This is where you can write in anything you want, and equally the seller can put kind of whatever they feel like in there. If you see something in there under the special conditions that doesn't make sense, it's really important to have your solicitor or conveyancer review it to make sure that you're protected under those weird special conditions. So be sure you read what's written in the special conditions, and if there's anything that doesn't make sense, have your solicitor or conveyancer review the contract. Common special conditions include authority to use email as a form of communication, for the sellers to have property professionally cleaned prior to handover, and for consent in the money in the trust to be paid to the agent to cover their commissions at settlement. These are all under here, and if there's anything non-standard in there, you definitely want to get it checked out by your solicitor or your conveyancer.
Moreover, this is where you have the ability to add conditions you want met, and these could include further conditions for your due diligence, or even having certain fixtures and fittings you want included, like washing machines, to be left at settlement. Also in this section, if you read anything which doesn't make sense, you want to get legal advice. As on a standard contract, it's the place where only the non-standard conditions can be added. Therefore, really important section to read and understand. A great special condition you can add if you're buying a unit is one that says the purchase is subject to you getting satisfactory checks on the unit. We have a whole other video on doing strata checks and body corporate reports. Put another way, you can completely pull out of a contract if the place is falling down, which you only discover from those body corporate reports. So Jayden, what are shadows, and do I have rights to retain them at settlement?
Yeah, so shadows, you'll see it as a section on the contract. It's basically all the stuff that's not bolted down to the house. It can be tables, chairs, an outdoor water feature, simple stuff like that. I even had one recently where they said the included chattels was to be the solar panels on the roof of the house. It's important if you see something in the house that you really want to keep, like art or weird stuff, it's included and listed under the chattel section in the contract. Because without those, when it comes time to settlement, they can just walk away, take their art, take their solar panels, and that's that.
6. Settlement. Essentially, this is where you get to move into the property and officially own it. Typically, the standard term is 30 days from contract date, but you're able to put whatever you want here. So if you're currently renting, aim to line this up with when the lease ends. If you're looking to do this, it's best to allow 2 or 3 weeks grace from when you settle the home to when your lease ends. This will allow time for any delays and also enable you to move from one house to the other seamlessly. 7. Insurance.
Listen, this is one that a lot of people aren't aware of, but under clause 8.1, it actually says the property is at the buyer's risk from 5 p.m. on the first business day after the contract is sale.
Meaning that even if your finance isn't approved and you don't own the property, that you take on the burden of the property risk. So if the property were to burn down, someone were to crash into it, you would need to foot the bill.
2 easy ways to negate this are 1, either just get home and contents insurance from the day after you sign the contract of sale, or 2, I've actually seen solicitors put this as a special condition in the contract.
But if the property is in a body corporate, you won't need to worry about this, as you'll already be covered under the body corporate insurance. 8. So you're not pre-approved. We all know that real estate agents' job is to sell a property for the clients. They work for the seller, and it's because of this, when dealing with them, it's common for them to play a game to enable them the highest chance of selling the property. Fair enough.
So if they're playing the game, are you? If you've started inspecting properties, I'm sure you've already had this. If not, picture this. You've just found your dream home, you're not pre-approved, and the agent's asking, are you pre-approved? What do? You got 2 options. You can just simply say you're pre-approved, the agent's not gonna ask for evidence, and even if they do, you don't wanna give it to them. Them knowing how much you're pre-approved is really something that's gonna help benefit them when you're negotiating and potentially make you overpay for the property. The second thing you can do, which I usually suggest with a lot of the home buyers that we help, is just tell the agents, hey, I've got a great deposit, I'm in a really strong financial situation, and I'm ready to buy. This usually gets them off your back and they're not gonna ask you about that pre-approval again.
And a great broker will only need 5 minutes to say if your finance will be an issue or not. With their blessing, you can go ahead and enter into a contract. Here in Queensland, we're very lucky, as we don't have the same issues as other states. And as mentioned earlier, we don't have to worry about being gazumped. And having the right clauses will allow sufficient time to get your home loan approved. Overall, if there's anything that doesn't make sense or unsure about, it's always best to get legal advice, as there's no point in being a hero when it comes to making one of the biggest purchasing decisions of your life.
So it's over to you now. Are you looking at buying a place? Did you know here at Hunter Galloway, we help people across Australia. So whether you're looking to refinance, purchase, or build, you're in great hands. Simply reach out, visit us online at huntergalloway.com.au. Thanks for watching, and remember to hit subscribe.